He looked like just another tired man on the subway, until a little girl sat beside him and sang a song that nearly broke him. But she didn't know that the song she picked, by pure chance, was the same one he used to sing with the woman he loved and lost. What started as a simple tune from a stranger led to a truth neither of them saw coming. Because the girl he just met might be the daughter he never knew existed. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and like the video for more inspiring stories like this. Also, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Now let's jump into the story. The subway train screeched to a halt as a cold breeze drifted through the underground station. Nolan stepped onto the platform with a sigh, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his worn-out coat. He looked tired, like someone who had been searching for something far too long. He entered the train and sat near the back, far from the noise of the crowd. The carriage was half full, filled with silent passengers lost in their own worlds. Nolan stared blankly at the window, not really seeing anything. He had just ended a call with someone he had hired to help him find May, the woman he had once called his wife. It had been 6 years since they last spoke. 6 long years since misunderstandings, distance, and pride had pushed them apart. He still remembered her laughter, her quiet anger, and the song they used to sing together whenever life felt heavy. Just as Nolan closed his eyes, he heard small footsteps approaching. A little girl, no older than 6, stood in front of him holding 2 grocery bags that were almost as big as her. She had short curly hair and a toothy grin, though 2 of her front teeth were missing. "Excuse me, can I sit here?" she asked, placing her bag on the empty seat next to him. Nolan smiled gently. "Of course." She climbed up with effort, settled in, and began wiping her forehead with a small towel. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and she looked very serious for someone so young. "Thank you," she said with a slight lisp. "These bags are heavy, but I don't mind. My mom's sick, so I went to get medicine and food." Nolan looked around but didn't see anyone with her. "Are you alone?" The girl nodded proudly. "I know the way. Mama says I'm good at remembering." He gave a soft chuckle, touched by her confidence. She was young, but there was something familiar about her presence, something that tugged at his heart in a way he didn't understand. They sat in silence for a while. The train rattled along the tracks, the noise blending with the low murmur of passengers chatting and the occasional announcement over the speakers. Nolan watched the little girl out of the corner of his eye. She reminded him of someone, though he couldn't quite place it. Then, without warning, the girl turned to him. "You look sad," she said honestly. "My mom says when someone looks sad, you should sing them a song." Before he could respond, she took a deep breath and started to sing in a soft voice. "There goes my heart beating. 'Cause you are the reason I'm losing my sleep. Please come back now." The tune filled the train car. Some people looked up from their phones. Others turned their heads toward the voice. Her words were slightly off due to her missing teeth, but her emotion was pure. She sang each line carefully, her voice clear and sweet, as though she truly believed the song could heal whatever was broken inside the man beside her. When she finished, the carriage erupted in light applause. Nolan didn't clap. Instead, he wiped a tear from his cheek. "That song," he whispered. It was their song. The one he and May used to play on late nights when they couldn't sleep. The one they danced to in their small kitchen. Hearing it again now from this little girl's mouth made something inside him ache. "Did you like it?" she asked, noticing his tears. He nodded slowly. "Yes. Very much. Thank you." "Mama says it makes the sadness go away," she said with a hopeful smile. "But you're still crying." "These are happy tears," he whispered. She seemed satisfied with that answer and reached into her coat pocket. "I have jelly treats. You want one?" "I only have 3, but I can share." Nolan laughed softly. "Thank you, but I think just sitting with you is enough." "Okay," she said, putting the treat away. "My name's Lila. What's yours?" "I'm Nolan." She looked at him thoughtfully. "That's a nice name." He smiled again. "Thank you, Lila." Soon the train began to slow down. Lila looked up. "This is my stop. Do you want to come with me? I can show you where I live." You can help me carry the groceries if you like. Nolan hesitated, but something told him not to let this moment pass. Sure, he said. I'd be happy to. They stepped off the train together and Nolan picked up the heavier bags while Lila led the way through narrow streets. They chatted about her school, her favorite cartoon, and her dream of becoming a singer one day. Each word from her mouth felt like a puzzle piece slowly falling into place. When they reached her gate, she turned to him with a grin. This is our house, the one with the red door. Mama's probably resting. She's been sick all week. Nolan nodded, heart pounding for reasons he couldn't explain. He looked at the house and felt something stir deep inside him. Come in, Lila said cheerfully. You can meet my mama. He stepped through the gate, unaware that everything he had been searching for might be waiting just beyond that door. Nolan followed Lila through the small iron gate that squeaked when it opened. The house behind it was modest, with cracked white walls and flower pots lined unevenly along the porch. It looked old but well cared for. Nolan could feel something heavy in his chest as he stepped inside, like he had been here before in another life. This way, Lila said cheerfully, walking ahead and pushing the front door open. Inside, the house smelled of warm soup and fresh laundry. It was quiet, peaceful, almost too still. The living room was simple. 2 small couches, a worn rug, and a wooden shelf filled with books and photo frames. Nolan tried not to stare too hard, but something about the room was making his heart race. Mama, Lila called softly, setting the groceries on the table. I'm home. I brought food and medicine. From the back of the house, footsteps slowly shuffled closer. A woman appeared in the doorway, her hand pressed against the wall for support. Her skin was pale, her hair tied back loosely, and her eyes looked tired but kind. Nolan froze. He knew that face. Even though years had passed, even though time had changed them both, he would never forget her. May, he whispered. The woman's eyes widened. She stared at him as if she were seeing a ghost. Before either of them could speak, May's knees buckled. Nolan rushed forward and caught her just before she hit the floor. Mama, Lila cried, running over. She has a fever, Nolan said, lifting May gently and placing her on the couch. Lila, do you have a wet cloth or a towel? Lila nodded and hurried off. Nolan leaned over May, brushing hair away from her forehead. Her skin was burning. I'll call a doctor, he said, pulling out his phone. A few minutes later, the cloth Lila brought was resting on May's head. Nolan sat nearby, holding her hand while she slept. Do you know how long your mom has been sick? He asked gently. 4 days, Lila replied. She didn't want to go to the hospital. She said she'd get better with rest. Nolan nodded, his eyes soft. She's lucky to have you. Lila smiled proudly. I try to take care of her. I even learned how to cook eggs. Nolan chuckled. That's impressive. As they waited for the doctor to arrive, Nolan offered to cook something warm. Lila guided him to the kitchen where he found rice and a few vegetables. He made a simple porridge, stirring carefully just like he used to in his own kitchen long ago. You're really good at this, Lila said, watching from a stool. Practice, he replied. I used to cook for someone I cared about very much. They shared a quiet moment before returning to May's side. The porridge cooled on the table and Lila took a spoonful after Nolan blew on it gently. Your turn, Lila said, holding out a spoon for him. Nolan took a bite, smiling. Delicious. A soft knock came at the door. Nolan opened it to find a doctor carrying a bag. Come in, Nolan said quickly. The doctor introduced himself and began checking May. He confirmed the fever and prescribed rest, fluids, and a few medicines. Before leaving, he assured them she would recover if properly cared for. After the doctor left, May stirred slightly. Her eyes fluttered open. Lila, she murmured. I'm here, Mama, the little girl said, rushing to her. May tried to sit up but winced. Don't move too much, Nolan said gently. May's eyes met his again. Nolan? It's me, he said quietly. She stared at him, disbelief and emotion flooding her tired face. How? Why are you here? I didn't know I was coming here, he admitted. I was just on the train. Lila found me, she sang to me, and then she led me here. May looked at her daughter, then back at Nolan. Her lips trembled. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. I didn't plan this. I've been looking for you for years. May's hands trembled as she wiped her eyes. You left. You told me to, Nolan said softly, but I never stopped thinking about you. They sat in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Lila returned with a small pack of jelly treats. Here, she said to Nolan. I promised I'd give you one when we got home. Nolan smiled and took it. Thank you. May watched them. The man who had once held her heart was sitting in her home, gently talking to their daughter, though Lila didn't know it yet. Lila, May said softly, can you help me to the bedroom? I want to rest. Okay, Mama, Lila said, helping her carefully. As they disappeared down the hall, Nolan remained on the couch. Lila, do you have a wet cloth or a towel? Lila nodded and hurried off. Nolan leaned over May, brushing hair away from her forehead. Her skin was burning. I'll call a doctor, he said, pulling out his phone. A few minutes later, the cloth Lila brought was resting on May's head. Nolan sat nearby, holding her hand while she slept. Do you know how long your mom has been sick? He asked gently. 4 days, Lila replied. She didn't want to go to the hospital. She said she'd get better with rest. Nolan nodded, his eyes soft. She's lucky to have you. Lila smiled proudly. I try to take care of her. I even learned how to cook eggs. Nolan chuckled. That's impressive. As they waited for the doctor to arrive, Nolan offered to cook something warm. Lila guided him to the kitchen where he found rice and a few vegetables. He made a simple porridge, stirring carefully just like he used to in his own kitchen long ago. You're really good at this, Lila said, watching from a stool. Practice? He replied. I used to cook for someone I cared about very much. They shared a quiet moment before returning to May's side. The porridge cooled on the table and Lila took a spoonful after Nolan blew on it gently. Your turn, Lila said, holding out a spoon for him. Nolan took a bite, smiling. Delicious. A soft knock came at the door. Nolan opened it to find a doctor carrying a bag. Come in, Nolan said quickly. The doctor introduced himself and began checking May. He confirmed the fever and prescribed rest, fluids, and a few medicines. Before leaving, he assured them she would recover if properly cared for. After the doctor left, May stirred slightly. Her eyes fluttered open. Lila, she murmured. I'm here, Mama, the little girl said, rushing to her. May tried to sit up but winced. Don't move too much, Nolan said gently. May's eyes met his again. Nolan? It's me, he said quietly. She stared at him, disbelief and emotion flooding her tired face. How? Why are you here? I didn't know I was coming here, he admitted. I was just on the train. Lila found me. She sang to me, and then she led me here. May looked at her daughter, then back at Nolan. Her lips trembled. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. I didn't plan this. I've been looking for you for years. May's hands trembled as she wiped her eyes. You left. You told me to, Nolan said softly. But I never stopped thinking about you. They sat in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Lila returned with a small pack of jelly treats. Here, she said to Nolan. I promised I'd give you one when we got home. Nolan smiled and took it. Thank you. May watched them. The man who had once held her heart was sitting in her home, gently talking to their daughter, though Lila didn't know it yet. Lila, May said softly, can you help me to the bedroom? I want to rest. Okay, Mama, Lila said, helping her carefully. As they disappeared down the hall, Nolan remained on the couch. He looked around the room, noticing a faded photo on the shelf. It was a picture of May, smiling, holding a baby. His heart stopped. He had never seen that photo before. He whispered to himself. Is she really mine? He knew the answer already, deep in his bones, but he needed May to say it. For now, he waited. The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the small bedroom window. Birds chirped outside as Lila sat at the foot of her mother's bed, humming softly. May lay resting, her fever now lower. In the kitchen, Nolan quietly stirred porridge again. The house was calm, but his mind was anything but still. Nolan had barely slept. He had stayed on the couch, going over everything in his head. The timing, the song, the child, and now the photo. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became. Lila was his daughter. He had already sent the samples for a paternity test the night before, using a contact from a private clinic. The result would come soon. But deep down, he already knew the truth, even without the science. Her smile, her eyes, her voice, they all carried pieces of him and May. Good morning, a sleepy voice said behind him. He turned to see May slowly walking into the kitchen, holding the wall for support. You shouldn't be up yet, he said, hurrying to her side. I feel better, she replied, though her legs were still shaky. Sit down, he said gently, helping her into the chair. He poured her a cup of warm tea. They sat in silence for a few moments. Nolan placed the bowl of porridge in front of her. Thank you, May said, looking into the bowl, not at him. You used to love this, he said softly. She nodded. I still do. Nolan looked at her carefully. Why didn't you tell me? May didn't answer at first. She placed her spoon down, hands resting on her lap. I was angry, she said at last. You left when I needed you most. I didn't know, he replied. You told me to leave. You said it was over. Yes, May admitted, but you didn't fight for us. You didn't stay and explain. You let me go. Nolan lowered his head. You're right, I failed you. Tears filled May's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. I was scared. When I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know how to tell you. I thought maybe you'd already moved on. Nolan stared at her in disbelief. I looked for you for years. I searched every record, asked people, even hired someone. But you disappeared. I changed my number. Moved in with my aunt after Lila was born, she said quietly. I didn't want help. I wanted to be strong. To prove I could raise her alone. Nolan reached out, but stopped himself. You did. She's amazing, kind, brave, smart. May gave a small smile. She is. May, Nolan said carefully. I took a test, a DNA test. I needed to be sure. She nodded. I figured you would. She's mine, isn't she? He asked. May looked at him directly, her eyes softened. Yes, she said. She's your daughter. The words hit Nolan like a wave. He had suspected it, hoped for it, but hearing it confirmed made his hands tremble. Thank you for telling me, he whispered. She doesn't know, May added quickly. Not yet. I didn't want her to grow up wondering why her father wasn't around. Nolan nodded slowly. Then let me tell her, or at least, let me be here. Let me make up for the time I lost. She likes you already, May said. She talks about your porridge like it's magic. They both smiled. For a moment, the years between them felt smaller. Later that day, Nolan and Lila sat in the small garden. She was showing him her favorite flowers. This one's named Sunny, and this is Bella. I named all of them, she said proudly. Nolan crouched down. They're beautiful, like you. Lila beamed. Mama says flowers need love to grow. That's why I sing to them. He laughed. Does it work? Of course, she said, crossing her arms like a tiny teacher. Don't you hear them smiling? Nolan looked around. I think I do. She sat beside him and rested her head on his arm. Sir Nolan, are you staying? He looked down at her, heart aching. Would you like that? Yes, she said without hesitation. You make Mama smile. I like it when she smiles. Then I'll stay, he replied. Promise? She asked. Promise. That night, Nolan stepped outside to take a call. The test results were in. You are the father, the voice said on the other end. He already knew, but hearing it confirmed felt like breathing for the first time. Inside, May was folding laundry while Lila hummed a lullaby in the next room. Nolan returned and stood by the doorway. May. She looked up. Yes? He stepped closer. Thank you for letting me in. I know I don't deserve it, but I won't walk away again. She didn't speak, but her eyes held something softer now. Not forgiveness yet, but maybe the start of it. I believe you, she said quietly. But it'll take time. I'll wait, Nolan replied. He sat down beside her as Lila sang softly in the background, her voice rising like a prayer. Outside, the wind rustled the flowers she had named, as if they too were listening. A few weeks had passed since Nolan first walked into May's home by chance. During that time, he became a regular presence in their lives. He brought groceries, helped with chores, and cooked breakfast on weekends. Lila began calling him Uncle Nolan, though there was a gentle hope in her voice each time she said it. May noticed the change in her daughter. Lila laughed more. She asked fewer questions about why other kids had fathers and she didn't. Her days were filled with warmth again, not just between mother and daughter, but something fuller. A feeling of family. Nolan and May didn't talk much about the past anymore. They focused on the present, and slowly, the trust between them began to grow again, but neither had found the right moment to tell Lila the truth. One quiet Saturday morning while Lila was playing in the garden, May stood by the kitchen window watching her. She turned to Nolan. I think it's time, she said. Nolan nodded. I've been waiting for you to say that. They called Lila inside and sat together on the couch. Lila looked up at both of them with wide eyes, sensing something important. Is something wrong? She asked. No, sweetheart, May said gently. Nothing's wrong. We just want to tell you something. Nolan took a deep breath and looked at May, then back at Lila. Do you remember how you said you wished I could stay forever? Lila nodded slowly. Well, he continued, there's a reason you and I feel close. It's because I'm not just your friend. May reached for Lila's hand. Nolan is your father. Lila blinked. Her eyes widened, then narrowed like she was thinking hard. Really? She asked, voice trembling slightly. Nolan nodded. Yes. I didn't know until recently, but the moment I met you, I felt something special. And now that I know you're my daughter, I want to be in your life. If you'll let me. Lila stared at them, her small hands twisting in her lap. So, you're my real dad? She asked again. Yes, May said softly. There was a long pause. Then suddenly, Lila stood up, walked over to Nolan and hugged him tightly. I knew it, she whispered. Nolan held her close, tears filling his eyes. Does this mean we're a family now? Lila asked, looking up at them. May smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. Yes, we're a family. From that day on, things changed in small but beautiful ways. Nolan and May talked more openly. They made decisions together. They picked up Lila from school as a team. Lila no longer introduced him as Uncle Nolan, but proudly said, "This is my dad." Then one afternoon, someone unexpected appeared. A woman named Selena showed up at Nolan's apartment while May and Lila were visiting. Selena had once worked with Nolan overseas and had caused tension between him and May in the past. May opened the door and froze when she saw Selena standing there with a smug smile. "Hello, May," Selena said. "I didn't expect to see you. Here." "What do you want?" May asked quietly. "I just came to talk to Nolan," Selena replied, stepping inside without being invited. Nolan heard voices and entered the room. His face fell when he saw Selena. "Leave," he said firmly. "You have no place here." "Oh, come on," Selena said, flipping her hair. "We used to be close, remember?" "You were the reason my family fell apart once," Nolan said. "I won't let that happen again." May stood beside him. You should go. Selena scoffed, but when she saw the look in Nolan's eyes, she turned and left without another word. Later that evening, as they sat on the porch watching Lila draw stars with chalk on the pavement, Nolan turned to May. I never got to say it, he said quietly. But I still love you. May looked at him, eyes soft. I never stopped. They didn't need more words. They simply sat in the silence, hands brushing lightly, hearts healing. A few months later, something new bloomed in their lives. Together, they opened a small cafe called Lila's Melody. It was May's idea. A place where people feel safe, she had said. A place where music and kindness bring people together. Lila helped decorate, choosing flower pots and naming them all again. Nolan baked the muffins. May brewed the coffee. And each morning, soft music played, starting always with the song Lila had sung on the subway, the song that had brought them all back together. People in the neighborhood loved the cafe. Some came for the food, some for the music, but most came because they felt the warmth behind the counter, in the smiles of a once broken family that had found its way back to each other. One evening, as the sun set and the cafe closed, Lila stood at the door, holding her parents' hands. Remember the first time I sang that song? She asked. Nolan and May nodded. I didn't know it then, Lila said with a grin. But I was singing us home. Nolan bent down and kissed her forehead. You really were. And under the soft orange sky, they locked the cafe doors, hand in hand, hearts full. A new beginning had finally arrived.